Following their slaughter of a Federation fleet at the Battle of Wolf 359, the advanced cybernetic lifeforms known as Borg periodically return to the Alpha and Beta quadrants, capturing and assimilating individuals in their never-ending mission to achieve perfection. Among the many humans assimilated during these years of conflict was the Borg designated 3 of 5, assigned to a scout ship which in 2368 crashed on a moon in the Argolis cluster. Yet before the collective could arrive to claim their property, the crash site was found by the USS Enterprise D under Captain Jean-Luc Picard. Sending an away team to investigate, they discovered 4 deceased drones, while 3 of 5 was wounded but alive. Unwilling to let even an enemy perish, Dr. Beverly Crusher insisted that 3 of 5 be taken on board for treatment. Captain Picard was hesitant, but soon agreed, after realizing this was an opportunity to lay a devastating blow against the enemy he so hated. A former drone himself, Picard was captured, assaulted, and mutilated by the Borg, who used the information in his mind to kill many Starfleet officers and win the Battle of Wolf 359. Though he was eventually rescued and physically returned to normal, Picard was mentally traumatized by the experience, and so with a live drone as his captive, the captain ordered his crew to prepare a deadly virus for 3 of 5, so he might be used as a carrier to infect the Borg collective, wiping out their entire species. Although the Doctor objected, Picard was adamant and many in the crew agreed with this decision, as the Borg were an eternal enemy who would not consider peace or negotiation and worked tirelessly toward the destruction of others. Isolating 3 of 5 behind a force field, with communication to the collective cut off, the Doctor treated his injuries and only grew more sympathetic toward him, as 3 of 5 behaved like a frightened child with little understanding of his current situation. Noticing that the Doctor was healing him and Chief Engineer Geordi LaForge was providing energy sustenance, 3 of 5 grew to trust them and readily complied with their instructions, even acting contrary to typical Borg behavior by engaging in a conversation about names versus designations, ending with Geordi suggesting the name Hugh for the Borg, who gladly accepted. As Hugh spoke more with the Doctor and Chief Engineer, he learned that sentient beings like those on the Enterprise did not wish to be assimilated and cherished their individuality. Rather than continue to demand their assimilation, he accepted their refusal and expressed his loneliness at no longer hearing the other voices from the collective. Even Guinan, the ship bartender who hated Borg, as they wiped out much of the El-Orian species, eventually had a conversation with Hugh and saw he was not what she imagined, even teaching him that resistance was not futile, which is why the Borg failed to entirely eradicate her people. Since Geordi was developing the captain's virus, he spent the most time with Hugh and taught him about emotions and friendship, developing a close bond between them. After Hugh referred to Geordi as his friend, the Chief Engineer spoke with the captain, explaining that while the virus was nearly ready, it now seemed wrong to infect this sentient being starting to reclaim his individuality. Picard responded coldly, comparing the Borg to a lab animal, and told Geordi to unattach himself from this false sentimentality. When Guinan expressed similar thoughts, Picard was angered and went to speak with the drone directly, determined to reaffirm his belief they must all be destroyed. Hugh recognized Picard as Locutus of Borg, his drone designation from the Battle of Wolf 359, and so the captain gladly assumed the role to prove his point, ordering Hugh to help assimilate the crew. Yet to Picard's amazement, Hugh explained that Geordi and the others did not wish to be assimilated, and refused to participate in any attack, even referring to himself with the pronoun I instead of we. Shocked by all he saw, Picard realized he could no longer morally justify his plan, and so instead let Hugh choose his own fate, even offering asylum with the Federation. And while Hugh made it clear he wanted to stay with Geordi, he understood the Borg would never stop looking for him, and so chose to protect his friend and the Enterprise crew by returning to the collective. Yet his reintegration into a Borg ship did not go smoothly, as his memories of individuality and all he experienced on the Enterprise sent every drone into a panic that paralyzed them in place. Seeking to protect the rest of the collective, the Borg cut off communication and abandoned their ship, leaving them helpless and unfunctional. It was in this state that the android Lore, brother of Data, found these exiled Borg in 2370, rescuing the drones to exploit their fragile state, giving them a new purpose as his subjects and army. Teaching them to act both as individuals and a collective, Lore directed their newfound emotions towards anger, violence, and loyalty to himself, promising to one day enhance their abilities and secure their future. In order to achieve this goal, Lore performed horrible experiments on the drones, which turned some followers against him, including Hugh, who led a faction of rebels into hiding. Making little headway with his experiments, Lore recruited his brother Data by disabling his ethical program and feeding him negative emotions. As an emotionless android who longed to be human, Data latched onto this feeling, and without his ethical program to instruct his reasoning, ultimately agreed to join Lore in exchange for retaining this ability to feel. While searching for Data, several more crew members from the Enterprise D were captured, while others encountered Hugh and his rebels. Although Hugh was angry, holding them responsible for all that befell him after returning to the Borg, he eventually agreed to help them launch a rescue operation after learning his friend Geordi was one of those held captive. With the help of Hugh's rebels, the Enterprise crew reactivated Data's ethical program, which opened his mind to rational thought, allowing him to turn on Lore and end his reign over the Borg. Departing on good terms, the Enterprise went on its way, leaving Hugh as the leader of this rogue, independent Borg faction. Decades later, the XBs, who like Hugh were once Borg but regained their individuality, were viewed with disdain, largely used as a cheap, highly capable labor force. Though Hugh was able to regain Federation citizenship, he chose to work with the Romulan Free State in order to gain access to an abandoned Borg cube, where he served as executive director of the Reclamation Project, doing what he could to ensure the fair treatment of the many XB workers. Yet it all came to an end in 2399, when the site was visited by his old friend Jean-Luc Picard. After a happy and heartfelt reunion, Hugh gave Picard vital information for an important mission and helped him escape when Romulan soldiers arrived in pursuit. Under interrogation, Hugh refused to give up Picard's location, and so the Romulans executed his XB workers. At first, their leader Narissa spared Hugh because he was a Federation citizen, but when the former drone disrupted their plan to take control of the Borg cube, she stabbed him in the throat and left him to die. A hero till the end, Hugh's sacrifice ultimately helped Picard and his allies accomplish their mission and save many lives.